My name again is Kris Lichter. I am a local kid, born and raised here in San Diego. I have been in the innovation space my whole life. I like to say that I'm a failed scientist. I came out when biotech was new here in town, and I thought I would be a marine biologist or a biotech lab guy in the new La Jolla biotech corridor that started in the 1980s when I was a kid. Um, and I found out very quickly doing some molecular genetics back in that time as like a college intern that I was not a lab person. I did not have what it takes to make an experiment go well over time. I just, you just kind of find out you either are or you are not. But what I did have was a deep love of science and technology and a deep respect for people who can do what I could not. And so my entire career, whether it's been at IBM, which I did a lot of innovation, leadership work for, running a startup in solid hydrogen energy out of San Francisco for many years, to being an investor and a venture capitalist, has always been thinking of myself as that failed scientist. If I can't be that scientist, I want to enable the people who can do the work and the magic and make all of that innovation happen. And from that perspective, there's really nothing better than to do what I get to do. And I'm sure Daniel will say the same thing. So we're really glad to have you all. Daniel and I, we powwowed about this earlier. We'd very much like this to be an interactive experience. No, there are no dumb questions. There are no uncomplicated questions. Ask whatever you like on any level, because one of the things that he and I, we very much agree on is that if we can save any of you ground, save you some of the scars that we probably have in various parts of our bodies from going through the journey of startup land and venture capital and building companies and all the things that come with that, we would love to pass it on to you because that's how it works, right? We pay it forward, and that's really what we're here for. So I'm gonna kind of interview Daniel, but he's gonna kind of interview me, and then we'll get to the place where we can ask whatever we want, and we'll run it until it conks out. Is that fair? Everybody good? Okay. Before I get into it, I do want to thank Liesel and Greg, who's not here, and Doug and Renee and Tammy for putting us on and making it so easy. Thank you. Thank you.
And for finding us a parking spot.
Oh, thank God. Thank you for finding us a parking spot. Oh, that was the most wonderful thing. Yeah. Okay, so I get to interview a really amazing human being who has had a very impressive, multifaceted journey since he came out of being a local kid too, right? So Daniel is vice president over at MasterCard's venture capital practice. And I think one of the things that we're gonna talk about that you may not, I don't know whether or not you've come across it yet or not, but there are different types of venture capital in this ecosystem. There is the kind of, and there's an angel investor and syndicates that are kind of groups of individuals. There's, of course, venture capital partnerships that are probably the ones you most think of. There's also corporate venture capital as well. And each of them are different and complementary. And so Daniel will tell you about MasterCard's flavor of that, and we'll go from there. But I thought I would just start by, Daniel, thanks for being here. And also, why don't you tell everybody about your career arc, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's great to be here, by the way. Hopefully you can hear me. I was a little worried about getting interviewed. I don't really like to talk about myself that much. I will tell you a little bit about my background because I think it's helpful. It's not a linear career trajectory, so it might be helpful for you all as you're starting your own careers. But I don't really like to talk about myself so much, so hopefully you can ask me some questions.
I'll keep goosing you, don't worry about it.
I like talking about my work a lot, but I don't like talking about myself. So we'll start with a little background on my career maybe, and how I got into the role that I'm in right now. And I never thought I'd be in the VC space. I just sort of happened to land there. My career really started out analyzing data. So I was a data analyst. I worked in consumer packaged goods. I worked in tech at Oracle, and my job really was to analyze data and make sense of the data and attempt to use the data that we had available to us to improve the decisioning around whatever it was we were doing. If it was product placement, product pricing, product promotion, whether it was targeted marketing, or whether it was decisioning in the course of credit decisioning or risk-based decisioning. The data drove everything, and I got really into it. But at heart, I'm a product guy. I went to back to school after undergrad to get my master's in innovation management, and most of my career was in product management. And in particular, it was around using data to build products that people would use to make decisions around. I spent a number of years at a startup here in San Diego called H&C Software. I was acquired by FICO, all around decision-making in the credit risk and fraud risk space, leveraging advanced analytics and neural network models to predict credit card fraud as an example. Everyone gets this. You probably have either been called by your bank or had fraud on your card. So you get it, and it's all data-driven. And so I really enjoyed that concept of using data to build products around and bringing product to market. And the focus really was around innovation in product management. I had no sense of the venture capital world at the time that I thought I wanted to be a product manager for my whole life. So it's interesting to see, how careers take different trajectories, and it's okay that it's not linear. Around 16 years ago, I started at MasterCard as a product guy, building products, working in the innovation space. And I ended up, maybe the last 8 years or so, working in a strategy role, moved around a lot in the organization, and took on a strategy role and ended up doing a lot of M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So over the last, let's say 8 to 10 years, I've done an acquisition or been party to an acquisition, one every year. So I'd say 8 to 10, it's a lot. 8 to 10 acquisitions over the last 10 years, some small, privately held companies where we go in under $100 million in acquisition, and do the due diligence, build a business case, look for synergy values. And I ended up doing a number of acquisitions. The most recent one, a public acquisition, $2.6 billion. MasterCard acquired a threat intel company called Recorded Future. It's a really big deal for MasterCard, big dollar value. And you have to figure out how to make that business case work. How do you pay for that $2.6 billion acquisition? And it's really exciting. There's a lot of effort that goes into that acquisition. It's really time consuming. And there's peaks and valleys of that kind of work. And I ended up in that role, sort of like a strategy role, getting to know a lot of venture capitalists, investment bankers, private equity firms. As we sourced and looked for companies to buy, I got really excited about the VC world and was asked to start a part of MasterCard's Start Path Ventures program, which we look at earlier stage companies, and I'll define that a little bit, or we'll talk a little bit about stages of companies. And that's what I've been doing the last year and a half or so, is running MasterCard's Start Path program, our venture program. And I'll explain a little bit about what that program is, how it works, and the venture part of that program. It's not just about making an investment.
Great setup, thank you. All right, so first though, let's stay on you for a minute. So let's talk about the career journey. So you did bounce around a lot. You've made different choices and had different roles to get you where you are. What kind of advice or suggestion would you give out to people about that journey?
Oh, wow. I would say follow your passion, of course. I was really interested in data and making data-driven decisions and creating products that use data. And that wasn't, nowadays, that's probably oh yeah, every product should be driven by data. That wasn't the case back in the day. I'm an old guy, so that wasn't the case back in the day. And so that was my passion. I really wanted a product to develop a product that was data driven. So follow the passion for sure. And it doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be a linear path. There's a lot of different opportunities for people interested in business. And it could be in product management. I always thought in MBA programs, they'll teach you product management is the hub and everything else in the organization is the spoke, right? So product runs everything, and you interact with marketing, you interact with sales, you interact with human resources, legal. I'm oh, that sounds awesome. It's like being an entrepreneur within a big corporate. I thought that was a great idea. I'm not sure how true it is, but that's what I was thinking at the time.
Okay.
But it's not linear.
It isn't. And I think just as kind of a side note about that very point, I don't know if there's anybody in this room who thinks they're going to go into venture capital at some point, but there is no one path into that like there is into any other career. Some of the best venture capitalists I know are people with no technology degrees or backgrounds. There are people who are the most technical people who have double PhDs and all of that, and kind of everybody in between. I think anybody who is curious and passionate about helping new technologies, new ideas, and good teams go change the world can be a great VC. But it's a very collaborative job. It takes a lot of willingness to be dumb all the time. Like, I don't know about how Daniel feels about it, but I often, in fact, this happened to me yesterday. I get a pitch on something of which, even though I have a life sciences background and I've been in non-life sciences technology my whole life, which is, as Daniel said, it's been a little while now, I still get stumped. And the best thing I can do is be authentic and transparent and say, I don't understand what you just said, or I have a dumb question. Please help me get to this. And no one's going to turn you down when you say that. But part of it is being willing to absorb something that is fundamentally outside of what you know and what you've interacted with. And over time, you get better. You get dangerous in a lot of these topics. But it's always about, by its very definition, innovation should be something new, right? I'm not investing in something that's been done 25 times. So by its very definition, I should be at some level a little surprised and delighted or stumped or whatever. And I think the key is, and this is something about anything we do, right, is being open-minded and curious. And I would say that your love of the data and where the data leads and what it could unlock is very much about your curiosity in that, wouldn't you say? And do you think that's changed a lot? Do you think the use of data around innovation has changed throughout your career?
Yeah, so I would just add on to I'm usually the dumbest person in the room, but I like to ask a lot of questions, right? And that helps me in the context of getting deeper into the technology, into the innovation, into the business plan, into the go-to-market plan. I'll ask a lot of questions. Some of the times I won't even really understand the technology, but I know that there's a business problem that needs to be solved, and I want to know how. So the curiosity is really, really important in the VC space, like asking questions. You'll get, if you're on the other side, you may get sick of, as a founder or an entrepreneur, you may get sick of all these questions. Why doesn't this person get this? I'm trying to explain it, but they're not getting it, and they're asking the wrong questions. But curiosity is really important. I'm sorry, I forgot what you were asking me.
Oh no, I was going to ask you back to your love of the data, and I was curious when you were talking.
Yeah.
It was making me think about, when we started out, data was on floppy drives that were big, and then they got smaller, and they were still floppy drives. And now we're in a place where data's unlimited in every respect, and we have AI and everything else. So how do you think AI data has changed in its role in innovation?
Yeah. Oh, it's such an interesting question, right? So in one respect, I don't think data as a moat, as a differentiator, as a vehicle for innovation has changed dramatically. It still is all of those things. If you have unique data, you can create something unique. That hasn't changed from 30, 50 years ago to today. The scale of that data, the availability of that data, the throughput of that data, the speed in which we're collecting data, delivering data, that's changed. And that's pretty dramatic. But I think data is still the differentiator. Data is gold. And it was back in the day when I was building things and analyzing things in consumer packaged goods, at Oracle, at HNC, and at MasterCard. Data is king. And we think about all the things that we have access to and want to keep for ourselves, and to differentiate products around. So like in one respect, I think it's the same. If you have really unique, interesting data, that's a clear differentiator and a moat. But the scale, the speed, the size, the throughput, that's definitely has changed. What do you think? What do you think about data, especially in your space?
Well, I mean, I think that I think you're right. I think data it's being generated at gigabytes and terabytes and petabytes in ways that we would have laughed at if someone had said it to us when we started out. I think in that, though, there's also, it's why data analytics and why now AI and machine learning matters so much, because it's the sheer volume of that data and the quality of the data. There's a lot of white noise, is what I would say. There's a lot of noise in the system now. And so it's very easy to get kind of like it's a tsunami of data on any given topic we could ever think about. I could ask anyone in this audience about a topic, and I would guarantee that if we went out onto the net, we would find out that there is enormous amounts of data. Now, what is the quality of that? What is the caliber? What is the value? How validated has it been? And how has it been utilized and even corrupted? All those things make data. It's just its explosiveness is in some ways is something to be watching. It's not a concern, but it's something to watch. And Daniel's referring, and I should have said it before, but I do a lot of work in defense tech. It's something because of the energy company that I mentioned earlier. Our primary partners and customers were the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. And that's a space for obvious reasons where data is, what did you call it, gold? It was everything. It's also highly protected, and it's competitive advantage, competitive disadvantage. It's material to an impact on something that could be world changing. So from that perspective, there's just a lot to pay attention to in a place where now anybody can generate enormous amounts of data. So I think you made a great point about it. So I guess my question about data, the follow-up is, what kind of data do I need to give MasterCard so they'll give me $1 million credit on my credit card? Or can I just talk to you offline about it?
Yeah, you can talk to me offline about it. But, interestingly, MasterCard doesn't have private data on individuals. We're looking at network level data. And I think that's part of the distinction and maybe also part of the competitive advantage around the IP or the proprietary nature of different organizations' data. What is that data and how can it be used? MasterCard doesn't make credit decisions. We don't have data on individuals. And but what we do have is network level visibility, net flow data, transactional oriented data, but not individualized. So like getting into that data is really interesting, and how can you use it for your product, for your innovation, for your advantage?
Okay, so that purchase on the dark web, you don't necessarily know, right?
I don't know, it's you.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. Forget I said that.
Yeah, but I know other things.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about it later. All right. Well, let's switch over to strategic venture capital, corporate venture capital, and MasterCard's specific way of looking at it. So tell everybody about, how does the company look at it? Why did it get into that? What is it trying to accomplish? What are its goals? What are the challenges to it? And how should anybody who would think in their own company, if they want to interact, if they wanted to come to MasterCard because they had a new fintech idea or startup, what are the considerations? So give us a story.
Yeah, so maybe this will be a little bit long-winded. You'll have to interrupt me. MasterCard has different avenues for making investments within the corporate setting. We have investments as an acquisition. We have investments as a minority investor, and we have investments in what we call a startup engagement program. It's a little bit different from a traditional corporate venture capital, CVC. We don't think of MasterCard's venture arm as a traditional VC. We're looking more at how we can engage with innovation in the startup community and to jointly develop, co-create, build, commercialize things together. Investment is a byproduct of a commercialization opportunity. The investment is not the reason to engage with a company. We don't make an investment from our program strictly for the purposes of ROI or strictly for the purposes of an investment. It's truly to accelerate some commercial interest in a company that we want to do business with, in a company that we want to co-develop with, in a company that we want to create some commercial program around. Could be a reseller, could be a white label product, could be a referral agreement. We want to accelerate the terms, accelerate the value of that relationship by making an investment. And it's a little bit of a different thought process, a little bit of a different approach than most traditional corporate venture capital, and certainly different from the investor side of venture capital. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about what you look at and how you look at the VC space,
Sure.
Which is different from our business.
I'm happy to, but let me quickly do a follow-up with you on what you said. So I think There are a lot of people who are in the startup space or starting out have never interacted with a large corporation like MasterCard is, right?
Yeah.
And the question becomes is how do I engage with them? When should I do that? And when you are all out there, how do I even find you? Do you find us? And what stage of that development of a company or idea, is it really appropriate to come contact you? Because I might be the startup CEO of a fintech product, and I might think this is the perfect time to talk to MasterCard, and I could be completely wrong about that. And so what kind of feedback would you give?
I'll tell you the kind of things that we consider in terms of criteria and who we look for. Not just in the fintech space, we look at companies in the analytics space. We look at companies in the security space. I'm a particular, I don't want to say this. I look specifically at cybersecurity, fraud, identity. I'm not a subject matter expert, but those are the kind of companies that I look at.
You're dangerous about it.
I'm dangerous, exactly. Not an expert, but dangerous. And so the kind of things that our criteria, the things that we look for is we're a big corporate, and we like to productize things and sell to our customers. Our customers predominantly are big banks and merchants, small businesses and merchants. And so in order for us to go to market with those kind of customers, we want to have a partner that has some established roots. And for us, that means product market fit. What is product market fit? For us, that definition of product market fit is that they have done some work. They have a product in market. They have customers. They have revenue, and they've previously taken on capital from somebody else. So it's a company that's a little bit more established that a corporate like us can get into, can do work with, and look to scale and jointly commercialize. So what does that mean? It means that we like to see companies that have taken on at least a seed round from somebody else, or preferably a Series A round. So they've taken on some capital, a few $1 million. It's not a company that has, bootstrapped the whole thing themselves. They don't have any customers, just an idea at this point. That's way too early for us. We're not going to bring them into our program. We're not going to make an investment. Too early for us to really action. We like to see a little bit more of that fit, a little bit more of that shakeout of what the product is, what the market is, what the needs are. It's been defined, it's been iterated around, and someone else has proven that by giving the first check. We don't give a first check to a company. We'll follow on after that first check.
Great, that helps a lot. I mean, I think my experience with corporate venture capital is it's as Daniel said, it's horse for course. It depends on the goals and objectives of the corporation and what they're trying to accomplish and their comfort level with adopting technologies at different stages of development. There are some, like in the energy space in particular, people, I'll make it up. If you're in the battery chemistry space, you're for EVs and that kind of thing, the fight is not at the cell level, the hardware level. The fight is at the chemistry level. And so it might make more sense, and there are corporate venture arms of various groups in that space who have an interest in being out front and early with the companies that are developing early chemistry, next generation lithium chemistries and things like that. So it kind of just depends, but I think overall, you asked me how I look at it as more of a standard VC, I guess, or an individual. I always look at people who have product market fit is definitely one area. I like to think of it as I also look at are you in a unique position with what you're building, what you're offering? And it's more than just the standard thing. I want to go solve a pain point, a problem. That's of course important. But are you doing that in a way that's better than anybody else? Are you passionate about it? Do you have the team to really take it to a much better conclusion than anybody else because a lot of people can identify a problem. Like I could drop a topic in the middle here and say, let's figure out what the problem is. And everyone would come up with probably the right problem. The question is who's doing it? What's the solution and what's better about it and who can do it best? And so I want to know there are people that either have experience in the field who they uniquely saw the problem at an angle that other people didn't see, and that's advantage. And maybe they're the team of people who've done some of that work already, whether they were in the lab or in a big company or government, and they knew exactly how to fix that particular problem better than anybody else. So I think it's It's an interesting question because it kind of depends, but in the end, right? It's about, is there something that's really unique here, and is this the team of people that really are they really capable of taking it to where it needs to go, which is a lot, right?
Yeah. I may add just a little bit, a couple other thoughts came to mind too as you were talking, Chris. One is there are plenty of early stage venture capital companies. There are accelerators that are looking for really, really young, maybe no revenue, maybe one person kind of just a great idea, a really great idea. That's not us. We source from these kind of early stage VCs and accelerators. They want to bring their startups, their portfolio companies to MasterCards because our interest is in scale, and their interest is in more of early stage, many small checks. We make very little checks to very few people, but a little bit larger size. So there's some differentiation between different types of VCs that look at early stage, really early stage, first check, accelerators, and then later stage VCs, and then corporate VCs, which is sort of where we sit, but I don't think of myself as a corporate VC, just because our program's not focused on ROI. But yeah, like one other thought, Chris, while I still have the mic.
You got the mic.
Um, the big thing for us is strategic fit. So in addition to product market fit, the solution that the startup or the entrepreneur is focused on has to have a fit and solving a particular need in the market, but it also, for us, has to meet a strategic intent. So we have strategic needs that we review quarterly, and it could be we have a gap in a product, we want to go to a different market, we want to see our product in a new segment, we're looking for new data sources to incorporate into an existing product. Those are the kind of things that are strategic for us that we go source for. We look for companies that meet a strategic need of our business. And this is really critical. Otherwise, they'll flounder. They won't make it in our organization. And so that strategic fit is really important for us. And I will assign someone from the business, a sponsor, to that startup that said, I have this need, I have this gap, I want to do this in this market, and I'll bring them together, and that's where that flourishes. It's not just about us bringing them into the program, giving them a check. It's about finding that individual sponsor that raised their hand, they have a strategic need, and they're willing to invest time and resources, maybe money, additional different type of money, to make that startup successful in our program.
Okay, great. So how about, what's the mix of that between MasterCard looking for someone that's absolute net new, extension to growth, new opportunity, help MasterCard move into different spaces versus filling out what I would call the internal portfolio, adding capability to existing product lines and the business? What do you think the mix is?
I'd say it's half and half.
Oh.
Yeah.
Has that changed, do you think, or has it always been about half and half?
So it depends on what part of the business we're talking about. In the security business, MasterCard's relatively new in providing security services to the marketplace. So that really is more net new. It's not about like just like a plug-in. It's really about how do we get new technology, new innovation, and help us bring that to market. In other parts of the business, which is quite a bit more mature, it's maybe a little bit more incremental.
Got it. Okay. So you look out at the landscape now every day. I'm sure you see all the hot technologies and all the great products. What gets you excited now, and what are you really focusing on?
So I probably hear about between 300 and 400 pitches in a year. So you can imagine, like, I hear a lot of pitches, and how do you sift through all those pitches? It's a lot. I'm really excited right now about agentic commerce and agentic activity, particularly in the agentic identity space. And I'll explain what this means in terms of MasterCard. So if you think about all of the agent-based activity, the AI agent activity, and applying that into the world of commerce, you as an individual assign an agent to go do something on your behalf, make a purchase, do some research, etc. That context needs some intent, and it needs some validation and verification. You have to know that this individual is who they say they are. They've delegated their authority, their identity to an agent to act on their behalf in the context of commerce and a purchase, and have the authority to do that. That whole cycle of intent needs to be discovered, needs to be validated. And we call this agentic trust at MasterCard, but it's really this agentic identity management. The content around identifying individuals and identifying individuals delegating authority to an agent, a legitimate agent, not a malicious agent, and ensuring that that content is delivered securely and in the right way so that the purchase is artifact adjusted, accurate, and good intention. So there's a lot of new movement in this space around what we call Know Your Agent, KYA. Used to be Know Your Customers, KYC, Know Your Business, KYB. There's now this new term, KYA, Know Your Agent or Know Your Merchant. And so there's a lot of innovation happening in this space, way faster than MasterCard can move. And so we're making some little investments in this space. We're bringing in companies that are doing this at scale, and it's only going to grow. It's really, really fascinating to see what agent and agentic and automated activity is happening in the commerce space.
What do you think are the biggest concerns as it's in the pace of innovation that's happening there?
Yeah, so like this is really interesting, right? For the last 10 years, my job has been to detect fraud, to detect malicious activity, to distinguish between humans and bots. Well, now what, right? The world's changed almost overnight, and bots are no longer all bad. Some bots have legitimate reason and purpose for being on your website, for making purchases. And this is fascinating, right? And it's so dynamic. It's happening so quickly. Overnight, almost overnight, literally, we're seeing all of this change happen. And how do we keep up with it? How do we change the entire concept, the paradigm, the predictive models around good bot, good human, bad human, and this activity on a commerce network? It's fascinating. Really, really innovation. This is groundbreaking stuff in my space.
Do you think the competitors in your space are thinking about it the exact same way? Do you find that there are differences in the approach?
Like everybody in the payment space is thinking about this. This is where payments are going. This is where commerce is going. It's only a matter of time. I mean, there are some differences on how you tokenize, how you deliver a token to an agent. There's all sorts of technical differences on how you think about attaching validity and verification and intent, defined word intent to these things. There's different approaches technically, but everybody's thinking about it. Everybody wants to ride this train.
And how much time do you spend thinking about quantum?
You know what? Less than you would think. I'm not a huge, maybe I shouldn't say it like this.
Just say it.
Yeah, I don't know about quantum. I'm not so sure that quantum will have a material impact on MasterCard's business. Certainly we think about quantum-resistant chips. Certainly we think about quantum-resistant cryptography. Yeah, it's important, but I don't think it's going to have a material impact. I don't think a fraud criminal network is going to spin up a bunch of really, really expensive quantum-oriented machines to defraud a consumer. I don't know. It's a stretch for me. Maybe 10 years from now, I'll think differently, but hopefully I'll be retired by then.
It won't be your problem at that point?
Yeah, not my problem. This is your problem. Quantum is a problem for you all to figure out, not for me. I don't know. I mean, I know you make investments in this space. What do you think?
Well,
what's your perspective on this? Because I'm pretty you can tell I'm not making investments in quantum.
I think the way you said it was excellent. I don't disagree, actually. I don't think it's today's problem. I think it is wise, just like in any risk mitigation strategy, to look at it and say, what prudent steps can we take now, um, where that can be slowed down and prevented as much as possible until the day comes when we have bigger problems at that level. And I think that's right. There is, despite the hype in the quantum computer business, quantum computers can't do anything really right now. Not really. That is rapidly changing, and I think it is going to happen certainly in the next decade. So from my perspective as someone who likes deep technology stuff, I think quantum cryptography solutions that are really well architected, that are focusing on those issues, it's like anything else. It's not a bad bet to make. And it's just like anything else. It's like finding the one of those quantum cryptography solutions that really is really the top of the heap, the one that is valid and has the most likelihood of preventing the things that would keep MasterCard and all of its customers up endlessly and forever. So
Yeah. Let me add to my initial sort of like off the cuff negative response.
Oh, you said you don't like it. You've got you on tape.
I don't. I'm not making any investments in the quantum space, but we have a whole team, a quantum specialist PhD team that looks at quantum for both our own purposes in cryptography and anti-criminal activity using our chips on a card, what have you. So yeah, sure. Like I'm not making investments, but we have other parts of our business that are looking more around longer term horizon.
Mm-hmm.
I look at really today's and tomorrow's problems, and we have another horizon that looks at really longer term, 3-5 year out problems, and a whole foundry team that looks at long term problems and solutions. But I'm not going to make an investment today in a quantum company.
And this brings up the point about collaboration between the different types of investors, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, this is obvious to you all, but Daniel and I, as examples of two types of investor, collaborate all the time, right? It's, as Daniel said, it's not his job to make those investments. It's my job. And I may come to Daniel at some point and say, Daniel, listen, I've been working with this company for a while. It seems very material to where you've been and what you've told me. Might be time for you to consider at least getting involved with pulling them into your program. And you might say yes or no or otherwise. And conversely, you may come to me, and often people, strategics do, come and say, too early for me, Kris, but you like space or whatever, and you need to talk to these people. They're the real deal, and here's why, A, B, and C. That happens all the time, and that's part of the kind of collaborative nature of not just the investor community, but the whole startup ecosystem. And there's a lot of sharing of ideas, and like anything else, we do. It's all about human relationship and being able to have trust. And I know that if Daniel is going to bring something to me, I believe him. I'm not going to overwork my due diligence past a point, because I don't need to be the SME in this part of MasterCard's business. He is. So, and vice versa, right?
Absolutely. And that's why we don't make the first check. We're expecting someone else to do that due diligence on our behalf, and we'll come in later on once it's been, vetted and validated. This may also be an interesting preface or entree into deep tech versus what I'll call surface tech, and long-term investing versus shorter-term horizons. So it might be interesting for you to talk about.
I'm so glad you asked.
Yes.
So everyone knows what deep technology is, or hard tech.
I don't even know what deep technology is.
Okay,
Tell us.
Raise your hand if you know what that term roughly means.
Deep tech.
Deep tech? Anybody? Oh, really?
See, I told you.
Oh, okay. Frontier tech.
I don't know what it means.
Okay, all right. So it could mean a lot of things, but essentially it means the kind of moonshot technologies and solutions that it might take you a lifetime to get through them and have something realized. New rocket technology, fusion energy, quantum computing, advanced cryptography, synthetic biology. These are the things that kind of fall into that kind of bucket. I spent a lot of years at IBM kind of on the early emerging technologies part of that business. That was all we ever did. So the stuff that IBM does in quantum computing, that was a group that I was part of for a long time. The early AI work that we did that ended up having us beat whoever the champion was, Ken Jennings in Jeopardy, with our own AI system those years ago. That was us. So I found myself, one of my favorite things is being part of those kinds of early bets that if you get it right, even if you just get one of them right, you've changed the planet forever, hopefully for the best. I like to think it's for the best. So that's deep technology, and I mean, again, it's a loose term, but by default and by extension, what it obviously means is this is not something that's going to have an ROI next year. It's not something that we're in it for 2 to 3 years. I was in a space company that IPO'd this year, which was called Nanoracks. It's now Voyager Technologies. It went public. I was part of that company for 10 years as an investor. That's a long time. And, you know, it just comes down to what you believe you want to put your money attached to and what you think really makes the difference. I mean, some of the most amazing things that have come out of San Diego have been kind of by extension deep technology things, or things that were really advanced early stage technology that was not intuitive and obvious as a commercial transformational venture, but became that way. And this, I think, is one of the things, and not to plug San Diego too much, being a local kid, but I do believe this with all my heart, that we do, someone once said that in San Diego, we do the hard things. We take on some of the toughest challenges, and that is fusion, that is quantum computing, it is synthetic biology, and all those things, a lot of space and defense and AI. And from my perspective, that's something I want to be part of. I want to be back to the failed scientist. I want to be part of those teams, and I want to help the ones that are making that solution come to the world's the world's service. And I think that makes a big difference. But as you well said, it's not necessarily ready to go tomorrow.
It's a really long-term horizon.
It's a really long-term.
Yeah, and I'm almost on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I'm looking for things that we can use today, tomorrow, and I don't have a lot of patience for 10 years. That's not our model.
Yeah.
It's different, right? And this is the beauty of having this whole spectrum of different type of investment options and different type of entrepreneurs too.
Yeah, different type of entrepreneurs. That's a great point. Not just the investors. It takes, and someone asked me this before we started the session, you know, you have to, if you're going to find investors, you better find them, and they better be people you can trust and you can do business with, because you may be in this a long time, way longer than you said. I've had investors come to me when I was running something, and they'd say, we'll be in and out of this in 2 to 3 years. And my answer is, good luck to you, maybe. It doesn't often run the way you think it's going to run. That's the way the world, we're filled with humans, and humans make mistakes, and when things don't come out as we expect, right? So you better be in it for however long it takes, or you may have a mismatch. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of answered it. You said 10 years is a long time, and then sometimes people say we'll be in and out 2 to 3. Like, what is, when you make an investment, how fast are you typically expecting to make a return on that?
It's a great question. So did everyone hear the question? How fast? Okay. So he was asking basically about mismatch of time horizons. If an investor comes in and wants to make an investment and the company thinks it's going to take, I'm paraphrasing, sorry. The company thinks it's going to take 7 years to really be realized commercially, but the investor wants to be in and out in 2 to 3 years, does that make any sense? Is that a good fit, right? And the answer is probably not. And, you know, there's a lot of time that gets wasted between investor and founding team, because at a heart, both sides want a transaction about this thing, this product, this technology, but they often don't listen to each other. You know, the VC will be saying, my portfolio horizon is 2 to 5 years. That means at the maximum, all my fund investments should be out by 5 years, or I will make them come out in 5 years, one way or the other. And if you're saying it's 8 years, you might as well walk away right off the bat. But a lot of times there's this need, hey, maybe he'll make or she will make an exception to the rule. And if I just convince them enough, they'll hang in with me for 8 years. It usually doesn't work that way.
If you wanted it to go faster or something, how much pressure are you able to exert in that direction?
That's a bad question. I mean, the answer is it's a bad question, not because you asked it, but because it's sad that it does happen. I don't subscribe to that. I just don't believe in that. I think if I'm not in it, if I'm not capable of basically sitting in the office, you know, theoretically with that team until it takes what it takes, I shouldn't be in it in the first place, and I'm wasting everybody's time, including my own, and my investors' money. Forget it. There are people who will try to pressure you, and that's usually where the problems happen. You know, they'll flip out a founder, the CEO who is doing a perfectly good job, but the board is impatient for a reason that is really not a fair reason. It's their opinion, and they make a change that is destructive to the business. So it behooves everybody on both sides of the transaction to be authentic about it and to talk plain, talk straight, because it doesn't serve anybody well. Because if ultimately it blows up the company, then what did that VC get out of that? They got a zero, and everyone lost their job, and the technology goes into bankruptcy or whatever happens to it. So yeah, great question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Pavan. I'm
Oh.
building in the AI space.
Sorry.
No, we just want to make sure that our live stream audience.
Oh, you can hear it.
Because we are recording this and we do have people watch it later. So
All right,
just
perfect.
please introduce yourself.
Of course,
Yeah,
yeah. Hello, my name is Pavan. I'm building in the AI space. I'm an undergrad here first year, and I love what you guys are doing. One of the things I wanted to ask is being in the opposite side spectrum, right? Like you guys, one in deep tech, one in like the surface level. What is the kind of founder you look for? Because I think that is some big indicator of whether or not you want to invest in them too. So I wanted to get that answer too. So
Yeah, awesome. Great question. You may not like the answer, but a great question. We look in particular, founders that are personable, sure, that have experience in solving this particular problem. But we also look for multi-exit founders. We want to see founders who have established the ability to take a company and successfully exit from it and do it over and over and over again. So that's not a great answer for you as a young gentleman starting out. But yeah, like really, I look for passion. I look for skill and knowledge in the business or problem area that you're trying to solve for. But I do like to see experienced founders.
Yes to everything he said. In a perfect world, in my world, I obviously don't get that most of the time. So what I look for is similar to what Daniel said. I look for someone who's capable in the domain that he or she is taking on, and a team of people that are really tight and have that kind of kismet. They have that family kind of thing amongst themselves. It means anything that's going to come their way, whether it's a competitor or less money than they thought, or any problem that will invariably emerge, that they're going to go knock the hell out of it. They're not going to take no. They're going to win it at all costs. Because in a lot of ways, in early stage investing, I'm betting on people. I'm not betting on the tech. And there's the old expression, you may have heard it, that it's better to back an A grade team with a B grade idea than the other way around. And boy, you only have had to live that a few times to know how true that cliche is. It's a cliche for a reason. And so I don't expect you. Obviously, it de-risks it great. If you've already been, if you're building your next life sciences startup, and you've already had $1 billion exit, sure look good to me. But I don't usually have that option. So I want to know that you're going to take every input and every learning, you and your team, and you're going to get better every day at what you do, because that's what I would have expected when I was on the other side of it. I didn't have all the answers as CEO of an energy company, but I expected my investors to believe that I would run it down until I did know the answer. And if I didn't know the answer, I would find someone I trusted who would help me understand and grow. It's all about your growth and your ability and your willingness to do it. I think where startup founders and teams go wrong is they think they have the best technology and they think that's all that it really takes. And it's kind of like you put this shiny object out in the sand and everyone should rush to it. And in AI, that feels that way right now. It feels like as long as it has AI slapped on it, it's worth $1 billion and pay me now or I go. Good luck to you, because there's a lot of noise in the space. People are getting very discerning now and it's not just having AI that really makes a difference. Okay, and Daniel gave a good example earlier. If it's agentic AI for commerce, really, what's different about your solution compared to the 50 you've seen already? So, and often it will come down to the teams, whether they can articulate a really good story and it feels like they're credibly able to go get it.
I really like that a lot. You're betting on an individual more so than you're betting on the technology. I meet a lot of founders, right? I get pitched a lot throughout the year, and I can pretty quickly judge whether a founder is willing to listen to feedback, whether they listen to feedback from me. I know then they'll listen to feedback from their customers, prospective customers, and market. And I meet a lot of founders who don't listen. And that tells me something, that they're not listening to their customers. You don't listen to your customers, your product isn't going to fit together with that need. And that's a big, big mistake, and also something I stay away from. Founder doesn't listen, I know they're not going to listen to their customers, their design partners, product teams, and that's a big turnoff.
Yeah, I think
Sorry.
it makes me think of I always do you remember when the Columbia or the Challenger blew up
Yeah,
off
yeah, of course.
the shuttle?
Yeah.
You know, it was a failure chain that happened because no one was listening to the engineer who was saying at the top of his lungs, this O-ring in this cold weather is going to break and it's going to kill everybody on the shuttle. And he was overridden, and he lived with that regret for the rest of his life. It tortured him forever. But NASA at that time had a culture of just get it done. We're on a budget. We're on a target schedule. Got to get going. And they overrode something that killed all those astronauts. This is the same thing with startup culture. There is often this idea that we run it as hard as we can. We might make morally questionable decisions that sometimes will come back and bite people later on. But it's whatever they misunderstand the idea of it. Whatever it takes is what you do. Yes, but whatever it takes also means having a culture of accountability as a group of people. You're accountable to each other, not just your investors, but to one another, because your careers, your success are all tied to one another. So it better be a culture of that. And if you have that and it's open and it's collaborative like that and there's authenticity and trust, it's probably rare that Daniel would look at you and think, you're not worth betting on. You know, he might pass on you because you don't meet their thesis, you're too early, all the things he talked about. But boy, he's not passing on you because you aren't a humble, leaned in, willing to learn and grow team of people who will adapt. Resilience and adaptability is that's kind of what I look for, because here's what I know is all the things I think about at this exact moment, I'm going to walk out the door and most of them are going to be wrong. Because the world's a dynamic. It's changing around me all the time. Startup life takes that and puts it on steroids. So you better be able to be resilient and adaptive. That's what I want.
This is so true. You're not going to get your product, your idea right the first time. Never. Nobody. The ability to take feedback, iterate, take input, iterate, and continuously adapt is critical, and I look for that in the founder. I know almost immediately whether the founder is willing to listen and take feedback, not necessarily from me, I don't know anything, but from their customers, from their design partners. Are they going to change their product over time, their idea over time? You have to be able to shift all the time because the problem shifts, and you learn from your customers, from your first delivery, from your implementation people. I think about that a lot. We beat that one down.
I love that one. Okay, why don't we switch into questions? Do you have anything else that you wanted to say? Because that was great. I think we should. It feels like there's
lots
hungry
of questions.
questions.
Yeah, lots of questions.
All right, we're shifting to question mode.
A microphone.
Okay.
Okay, so I will handle the microphone for the audience. So raise your hand and I'll come to you. And then when I give you the microphone, please tell us your name and then your question. Oh, thank you. There you go.
So as Ms. Rich, you explained earlier, MasterCard actually is a operator of global payment network. So you sit among banks, like acquiring banks, issuing banks, and cardholders, all of us are, and merchants, right? So the reason you and Visa can make money because you build payment rails. But how you make money is actually merchants pay. I think card code also pay into a transaction fee, right? So I'm originally from China, so from those emerging countries or markets, when I go back to China, so we very few using a credit card.
Sure.
We use just phone, Alipay or WeChat Pay.
Yeah.
So even every street vendor can just scan a QR code and get payment right away, bypassing. I don't know if they bypassing the banks, but right. So I'm thinking. So basically, merchants and consumers like us, we can bypass the banks if the blockchain technology enables that. So it actually reduced the transaction fees, right? So we pay less, So I want to understand how will blockchain technology disrupt your business model?
Yeah. So interesting question. If I understood it correctly, MasterCard and Visa partake in a four-party system. So you have consumers, you have merchants, you have banks, and you have a network that sits in the middle for card-based payments. There's lots of other forms of payments. Real-time payments, account-to-account payments, peer-to-peer payments. Alipay is a form of a peer-to-pay payment mechanism. And there's also newer blockchain or on-chain oriented payments. What makes the MasterCard, I'm not an advocate for MasterCard only, but what makes MasterCard's network secure and have some redundancy and proof is what you pay for. You pay for, as a consumer, as a merchant, as an acquiring bank, you pay for that kind of speed, that kind of redundancy, that kind of liability shift, that kind of security, that kind of settlement, instant settlement. And there's some security around that that we all pay for as a consumer, as a merchant, as a bank. How that money shifts, that's not my purview, but that is the way that system works. There's alternative systems, of course. You can make an ACH payment. You can make a bank-to-bank payment. You can make a peer-to-peer payment. They don't have the same level of, all of them have different levels, I should say, have different levels of security, have different levels of redundancy, have different levels of ability to charge back or get your money back if that payment is fraudulent, or if you made it in mistake, or if the shoes don't fit. That's what's missing in some of the other payment forms, peer-to-peer especially. In the context of blockchain, the question was really around, is blockchain going to manifest in a way that will distinctly alter or put away a payment network like MasterCard? And I think maybe it will. I think there's some deficiencies, clear deficiencies in a blockchain network today. There's no chargeback rights, there's no liability, there's no way to get your money back if you're defrauded. That's pretty severe. I wouldn't put my money in that kind of payment mechanism to buy shoes, and all of a sudden I lose all of my money. So there's some stablecoin, blockchain, there's some deficiencies in that kind of network. But is it going to be more pervasive? I think so. And you'll see MasterCard's made a lot of investments in this space. We just bought a blockchain company. Maybe it was 2-3 weeks ago. We spent, I think it was $1.6 billion buying a blockchain company. So we're hedging our bet. And I don't think that the consumer will automatically shift to one or the other. I think you'll want a variety and a diversity of payments for different things. You may buy your house where everything is validated, verified using an on-chain payment mechanism because the contract's going to be on-chain. The verification's going to be on-chain. The documentation's going to be on-chain. So in that context, it makes a lot of sense. Buying shoes? I don't know. Yeah, please.
So I'm going to talk out of school because he knows way more about that than I do. But here's what I know about things like blockchain. Nobody cares. And in terms of the consumer and what they know about, they don't have to know anything about blockchain or anything about PKI or any other security. What they care about is what you were kind of hitting on is it easier for me to do it? And do I feel safe about it? And so I think you have to always look at these kind of new technologies as, is it additive to the customer's experience? If it is, it will probably take off just naturally. Like the first time I went to China and did Alipay and WePay, blew my mind. I mean, we weren't even doing tap here in the US at that time. I mean, it was almost unheard of. And I go to Shanghai and I'm just everywhere I went, even in outlying villages, I was doing it. They had to dust off a credit card machine for me. It was hugely embarrassing to pay for dinner. They laughed at me the whole time, and we were all very good-natured about it. But that, to me, I came back and I was like, I only want to use that from now on. It's ridiculous that we aren't using that. And shortly thereafter, right, at least tap became, and cardless became more normalized in the United States, but we were late. So I didn't care what did it. I care if it adds value to my life. And if I care about it and millions of people like me care about it, Daniel cares about it.
You know, it's interesting. We even before the session started, we were talking about the trolley. And you said sometimes you take the trolley to the airport. I'm like, well, it sounds like a lot of friction. And this is what we're talking about. Friction is something that will kill your product. If there's any friction, and now like every one of us have our iPhones, our Android phones, and we're using Apple Pay, Google Pay, because it's frictionless. I don't even carry a wallet anymore. I don't carry a wallet. Everywhere I go, I can use Apple Pay. It's easy. It's getting to Alipay, getting there, different mechanism, different network, different rights around liability shift, but it's frictionless. And if you're thinking about a product or you have an idea, friction is really important. That trolley for me, I'm not going to take it to the airport because there's so much friction.
Thank you very much. So you guys are on opposite ends of the investing spectrum, right? For you guys, what is traction?
I see I'm always going to get the early shot at this one. Traction. Tell you what traction is not for me is I don't care about that whole ARR thing. I think that's been overplayed. Here's what I would say about it is traction to me is a demonstrable proof point that it is moving towards the product fit that Daniel's talking about. And it also depends on the stage of the technology. If it's an alpha level technology, an early seed stage investment thing, what kind of traction do you possibly have? And I think that is, again, back to the question you were asking about the mismatch. What investor comes and says, show me your customers, and you haven't raised $1 yet? You might have one if you're really lucky, or two, but they're certainly not long-term. You haven't been around long enough for that to even be a thing. So that's a mismatch. It's a silly thing to ask for, and it's not realistic. And there are a lot of investors that will ask you for what is essentially a Series B answer to that question, and are asking at the seed level. And now some will say, well, that's just competitive. It's the value provision, the expectation is being pushed downward to earlier stage. Okay, but back to the friction point Daniel just made, it runs into the hardcore reality of daily physics. Like you can't possibly be developing a new therapeutic in biology and have lots of customers. How is that even possible? So to me, I take it on a case-by-case basis. If you're a space company, I'll give you a good example. If you're a space company, you're in the propulsion business, I do want to see that you're working with DoD. Because they're the early adopters, they have the money up front. I want to know that you have a SIBR, you have something that's going on that shows there's interest in it that is resulting in either a dollar payment to you so you can continue your development, or something that is accretive to the startup. That's how I look at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't come across this word that much. I don't think about it. I think about it in the context of our own commercialization. Like we have criteria for selection, sure. We want to see revenue, but I don't ask them like, what's your ARR? Or, what's your net ARR? I don't ask questions like that. I want to see that they have some revenue. I want to see that they have customers. Who are their customers? My interest is more around, can we commercialize something, and how do I take it to market? Man. Thank you. Yeah, for sure.
Hi. Hi, my name is Yara, and thank you so much for your insights. I have a question regarding what's your take on responsible AI and human-centric innovation?
You want to go? Yeah, you look really excited about this one. So responsible AI. We at MasterCard, we of course think about this a lot. We have huge teams that think about how we're using data, what data we're collecting, and in the context of AI, how we're using that data to form decisions. It's a big deal. I don't look for. It's not an area of investment for me. I don't look for companies that. I don't look for companies that specifically are doing a responsible AI-oriented development. I want those companies that I do invest in. I want to understand where they source their data, how they get their data, what privacy rights they have around their data, and how they use the data in the context of our business. Yeah, that's important. I forgot the second part of your question. Human-centric innovation, hugely important. And the whole concept of design theory is really, really important, particularly in our business where it's very consumer-oriented, and that context of developing for a human and creating solutions that humans want to use. The experience is easy, it's enjoyable, no friction. I mean, I go to a lot of websites. I do a lot of activity online, make purchases. There's a lot of friction. And so this concept of human-centered design is really important. I don't see it enough.
AI in general scares the hell out of me because not because of it as a technology, but because I'm not sure we're ready for it. I fall into that. I'm not a Luddite, but I fall into the camp of someone who's been around early stage technologies that are powerful my whole life. Sometimes we're more ready for it than others. And I think in this gold rush of AI, people's morals are going out the window, and their integrity in the race to get that next funding round, to beat another AI company in that segment to market. It's just like anything else. Power is really corruptible. It's a corrupting influence, and it's. I think we're building AI faster than we are mature enough to deploy it. And certainly we are fooling ourselves if we think that you can make something that self-improves and we can put the genie back in the bottle and shut it down. Sometimes I actually look out and I think we're replicating the Terminator movie almost perfectly. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I look at Jensen Huang NVIDIA, who I'm an investor of. I think it's an amazing business. And I think, is that the same as the guy who did the chip in Skynet and Terminator? Now there's someone who's doing Optimus. Elon's doing Optimus over here. And I look at the whole thing and I go, well, this is like a bad science fiction movie. However, I do think there are people, and Anthropic, I give Anthropic a lot of credit. I think if there's anyone who's setting the bar for what that should look like or could look like, knowing that we all have a lot to learn, Anthropic is probably doing it right. They're the very fact that they are being hit by Department of Defense right now for their willingness to do and not do something is not necessarily, I'm not going to judge who's right or wrong in that. I have an opinion about it, but I think what matters in that is that the conversation was even that the fight's even happening. Because the worst thing we can do is, in any technology, could be anything, is that we choose not to have that conversation. This is where friction matters more than anything. If we don't have the friction at something this powerful, like anything else, it will have unintended consequences that we may not be able to control. I think we will get better at it. I do believe that most of the time when we start something like this, we do improve and we realize that maybe we were overstepping and thankfully this is hard stuff to do. And so by its very nature, it's stumbling. I think there's a lot of people who look out at all the AI products in the market and a lot of it's junk. It was built fast. It was built with a lot of hype and all that stuff. And in the end, it really doesn't, it adds friction, to Daniel's point. It didn't make something better. It just added another layer of interaction that we didn't need in the first place. And so I think that's going to help us. And I think it's kind of a self-fulfilling cycle. I'm a big believer in human-oriented innovation, though. I think anything we should be doing, including AI, should be with a clear sense of it should make things better for not just humanity, but everything on the planet. I think it should be kind of an ethos. And back to the question of what do I look for? I want to look for someone that I can trust who, if it's something that's AI or machine learning, that they can look me in the eyes, and when I ask them the hard question about their values about this stuff, that I get a good answer that makes me feel, because I do not want to be the one who empowered Terminator. That's not what I'm on this planet for. Maybe some others, they don't care. But I think we need to ask those questions, and it is good and healthy to have differences of opinion about it, and we should be testing each other on that. How's that?
Hi, my name is Ken from the San Diego community. Thanks, Kris and Daniel, for sharing the thoughtful insight and a lot of good guidance. So I have a follow-up questions on the previous questions. You already mentioned about what you're looking for in the founders, what types of business. And it's very fascinating to see like two spectrum of investment. When you already found a team, the next step is like, how do you go about doing the valuation? Sometimes it can be very vague. You're making a big bet. Same thing in AI technology. I'm curious about like what is the latest trends in doing the valuation? Thank you.
I missed the last part. What are the latest trends in what?
Valuation.
Oh, in valuation. I mean, I'll start first, and then Daniel can give the better answer. I need you to be a human being, and I need to know that I'm entering into a partnership with you, that both sides of us, usually we either win or lose together. It's rare that it's going to be, 1-0 on that. And so my evaluation comes from doing enough interaction with you and your team to know whether or not you're bullshitting me, and whether or not maybe not something nearly as like nefarious as that, or whether you're not being honest with yourself about what it's going to take, all the things we've kind of covered, and whether or not you just have bought into some hype machine that is hand waving away the very serious nature of being in the startup and innovation space. It's not for the faint of heart. It just isn't. It's just not a safe place to be. It is a place where you're going to come in, and it's like getting up and singing a song in front of somebody at Petco, full stadium. You are putting yourself out there in the most possible way. You are super exposed. And I need to know that if we're going to go in this together, we're going to get up and do the song and dance in front of 50,000 people at Petco. I have to know that you are straightforward and you are what you say you are. And there are ways to test that. There are ways. I think Daniel also feels it. He's seen it enough to know when someone's any of those things and when they're people to bet on. Track record does help, of course. But in a case like mine, where I often don't have a track record, I have to lean on side references, things that are indicative of you and who you are as people. And I make that, and I have to take a risk on you. And Daniel made a great point about, are you capable of learning and listening? And if you can listen and adjust to whatever I'm talking about, I think that's a pretty good sign. And so that's where I would say.
I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly. Did you say valuation? How do you value a company? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. How do you value the company? So I'll give you a couple different answers, right? In the course of my current role, not in the M&A space where I was previously. In the M&A space, it's quite different. You're doing a true NPV calculation and trying to understand what the net present value, future value of the company is going to be, and what kind of synergy value you can create on top of it, and coming back to a return on capital. That's very different from what I'm doing now. Now, I don't care really what the valuation is because I'm a follow-on investor. I don't set the price. I don't determine the terms. Once they have a term sheet from their primary investor in a round that we want to participate in, I take those terms full stop. And I'm only taking a 10% cut of that existing raise. So it's very different. I don't think about valuation. Someone else is doing all that math, all that work for me on my behalf, and I'm just a follow-on minority investor. And it's quite different. But you'll find that maybe Kris can lend a little bit better consideration in terms of actually valuing a company if you're giving, if you're the primary investor and if you're delivering, delivering that one of those main checks.
I'm sorry I misunderstood your question, but I hope that other part was valuable. Yeah, it is an art. It's an art more than a science. I'm one of those people who doesn't necessarily follow the idea that it's a mathematical equation. You put A and B and C in, and it's going to spit out a number that will turn out to be predictive or effective. I think it depends on the industry. For example, I can look at it. Let's talk about AI again. I can look at someone's AI technology and their team, and I can think, well, the market segment only says a seed stage company at this point should be, if they're raising 10 million, it should be a 40 pre. Meanwhile, they have 7 credible investors who are bigger than I am. Let's say make up at Sequoia or Kleiner or someone like that, and they're coming in and offering 100 million pre. I don't think they would do that, but let's just say that they did. There is a marketplace. Yes, there's a marketplace that is driving a range of values, and you have to decide, is it a good deal for you or not? And that's going to come down to, again, I'm willing to take less of a company if I think the upside is much bigger and this team are the ones to do it. I think it's always about coming to the place where you as the investor are comfortable, but you're going to look at the industry and what it's been engendering, what are comps, basically, comparables, what success has happened, what kind of up rounds have happened since that time, what's changed in the market. The worst possible thing is to get into a bidding war on something that's frothy and to find out that that froth peters out 2 years later, and now it's a down round. And a couple years ago, they talk a lot about that era kind of around COVID where there was a froth in the market and a lot of people were stuck with a lot of bad deals. So, but in early stage, again, back to all the uncertainty that comes with early stage investing, good luck to you having a mathematical equation that helps you pin that down. But it's going to be all these intangibles.
It's interesting, depending on the stage of the company, if you think about, in the old days, we used to think about a multiple on EBITDA. Most of these companies have no profit. So then you go to a multiple on revenue. Many of these companies don't have revenue. So what's the heuristic in terms of valuation? Doesn't always make sense anymore.
Hi, my name is Zoe. Earlier, Kris mentioned that investors are becoming more discerning for AI products. What's your take on people saying that the AI bubble will pop in the next few years, and where do you think the industry will head towards?
Where do you think what was the last part? Where do you think where it will head? Do I think it will pop? 100%. 100%, because it happens all the time. It's happened to us. And you look at the dot-com era, look at 2008. We go in cycles, and we get excited about something that rises above all the other technologies. This is where we are with that right now. It can never sustain itself. It always falls back because by its very nature, it's being overbuilt. The solutions are not necessarily robust enough, but they're being valued as if they are enterprise grade, sustainable across governments and countries and all those things. And the money is chasing high deals. Invariably, that never lasts. That's not a bad thing, though. In fact, it's a wonderful thing. If you were in the dot-com era, I was in the Valley at that time, and right when I moved back home here to start a family, I was up there. And some amazing companies, after everything blew up, some of the best companies of took off from there. Google was barely alive in the dot-com era. It just had started. And look what it became. Dropbox, Instagram, a lot of these, Facebook, they were all... So good things come out of a deflationary period. It's kind of about, not chasing it too badly and really looking to the roots of whether there's real value. I think if you look at AI, I would ask the simple question. If AI's bubble collapses, is what this AI team building still going to be valuable in the end? And the answer to that is yes. Who cares whether now all we're talking about is the deal and whether it's a good deal to get into or not. And I think AI is going to do that. I think it's going to shake out, and I think we're going to find in every industry, AI is going to make a material and a positive difference. But we're not there yet. We're going to have to get through that decluttering that will come from a lot of people losing a lot of money. And I don't know about how Daniel feels about it, but the bar for me on an AI deal is extraordinarily high, almost higher than anything else I can think of. And that's including space and quantum and stuff like that. Daniel has nothing else to add.
Is there another question?
Hello, my name is Hamza, and I have a short question on failure. How do you guys assess that, okay, in my work, I failed, and how do you work out from that? Because obviously, in VC stakes are pretty high, right? How do you answer to the people you do answer to, and how do you move on from that?
Oh, okay. So I'll start this because I don't know if Daniel's actually failed. He's been very successful. I, however, had to shut a company down a couple years ago and lay off every one of my friends and tell all my investors and my customers, including the US government, that it was over. And we can go get beers later, and I can tell you the gory details of how we got there if you're 21. Otherwise, you can have a sparkling water or something. Listen, it's so first things first is you better know when you're in this game, whether you're an investor or a startup founder, that is a distinct and in fact highly probable outcome. And it's better to be ready for that. It's okay. It doesn't mean it doesn't sting like hell. It was one of the worst days and weeks and months of my life and years of my life. Doesn't change I would do it again. You have to, if you believe in it, you have to swing for it. Failure is something that, if it happens to you, you better be willing to learn from it. Because there's no, what's the expression there? The only way forward is through. you have no choice but to get up the next day and go out the door again and do something different or the same thing again, better. I mean, there's probably no one in this room that hasn't failed at something. We're all still here. And we're conceivably, if you're in this room, you're trying to learn something and get better at what you want to do. That's all that it is. But I think you want to know in your heart and your team, you want to have done, and this goes back to character and dedication to the cause, to the mission. You better have done everything. You better know that the day you pick up that phone and you've got to shut something down, that you know in your heart, more than anybody telling you that third party, that you did everything you could to keep it from that happening. And if it still happened, that's life. That's the way it is. But you have to kind of, I think you'll know it. I knew it. I knew exactly that I had done everything and that we had all done. And boy, for a certain zig and zag and things, it would be completely different. There's I'm not trying to plug anybody's book, but Nate Silver, who's an amazing writer, has a book called On the Edge that I just read. I don't normally like business technology, how-to, best practice books. I love this one. And he talks a lot about Elon and people like Elon who, Elon several times with SpaceX has been one launch away from complete bankruptcy. Not kinda, total destruction of everything that SpaceX had built. Tesla has been like that too. Did it fall his way? Yeah, it did. So there's a lot of luck in that. But he also did everything. You can argue that whether you like him or not, he did everything and his team to get him to a place where the luck was more in his favor than it wasn't. So as long as you're doing that, failure is okay.
Yeah, I would say failure is inevitable in life for sure, and in business also. I've made investments that have gone bad. I've launched products that have failed. I didn't do a great job of understanding that product market fit, didn't sell. I've acquired companies that subsequently we had to shut down and sunset. Yeah, you learn from them, hopefully, and you try not to make the same mistake twice.
I just want to make one final thing about the startup shtick, the ecosystem, all the stuff that you read in TechCrunch and all these things. Do me a favor and don't buy into it. Don't listen to that stuff because there's a whole system that is getting monetized to build up this mythos around startup stuff. And they'll say things like, only in small companies can you innovate and create something glorious. A MasterCard could never do that. That's ridiculous. It's the exact same thing. It's just different resources with different constructs. Amazing things have come out of organizations. And anything that was small like Google is now the big company, right? So what does every startup want to be? A big company. In its own way, you can say it however you want, but there's a lot of stuff like that that is detrimental to a startup founder's journey, I think, and to investors too. We all suffer a little bit because of that stuff that has been monetized. Failure is on one side of that, in that failure is supposed to be a badge of honor, and they make it sound like you fail and then you get out the door and there are 10 offers waiting for you because good for you for failing. Here's your big job. Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't mean failure and learning and the growth isn't important. Also the same thing with success. You might be dumb lucky succeeding. There are a lot of very rich people out there that are dumb lucky. And for the grace of all of us, we would be those people if it had fallen our way. Never underestimate that too. And don't confuse wealth accumulation with, grit and resilience and some of the things we've talked about. They may not have actually done any of those things and still been successful. So I just think you don't buy into either end of this spectrum. Do your best, have good people you can trust, go out there and try.
I have one last thing to say on this too, because it's really interesting, right? In the product world, there's a saying, fail fast. So failure is not seen as a bad thing at all. You want to fail fast. You want your product to fail over and over and over again so that it gets better, so that you meet that need, so that you find that fit, so that you iterate quickly. Failure's good. I wouldn't see it as a bad thing.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk today. I kind of have a twofold question. First one being, you said that you had over 400 different kind of pitches within 1 year. What makes you move forward with being able to see if that person is the person you want to get pitched to, And also, besides a warm introduction, how would you expect a founder to approach you? Because I feel like people pitch you all the time, but what makes them stand out if you don't have a warm introduction?
I'm happy to go first. So we take applications to our Start Path program online. We try and review every single one of them. We get a lot of warm leads from VCs, from contacts in the industry, from other portfolio companies, other startups that have been in our program, tell their founder friends to join our program. And I guess really the thing that stands out as why a company selected over another is if there's strategic fit to our needs. We specifically are looking for very specific things that have a business driver behind them. And that's usually the impetus for us to select a company. Does it have that strategic fit? Does that answer your question? Awesome.
I think barring any other external recommendation from someone I know, which is a big part of it too, let's just say I'm getting something completely cold. First, the content of whatever it is, it could be a one-pager, an email, some bullets, a chart, deck, whatever. It has to grab me. It has to grab me. I mean, you have to have something that it makes me kind of sit back in my chair a little bit and go, oh, wow, okay. And intrigues me enough. And then I want to go see what we've talked about throughout this event is I want to see that what follows is a founder or a founding team that at least before I even talk to them, looks like they're capable of fulfilling on that zing that they just told me about. And from there, if the 1-2 punch is there, yeah, I'll start doing some homework, and then I actually go out and then I start doing homework on you all. I'll start to at least go out and do some due diligence that's very light, and to see, does that story kind of knit up? If I don't know anything about the market, it's something new, I want to get a little bit more versed on it to see whether or not I'm just so naive and new in this space that of course I would be impressed by it because I don't understand warp drive. And anyone who would look at this would think, oh my God, it's warp drive. It's thrilling, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing. And there are, with a little homework, you can quickly realize that that idea is a really great lab experiment and lab project that, probably not. So anyway, go ahead. Follow through.
Yeah, I have a follow-up on
Yeah.
that. So when you say it really catches your attention, do you feel like that's emotional? Is that credibility? What is it, in your opinion, or in your specific case, really catches your attention?
Well, okay, so I'll talk very specifically because, again, I'm more of an early stage, a very early stage, and I'm a long horizon deep tech investor mostly. So I want to see something that I think is changing the planet. It's really that simple. I don't care. If you don't, any of you, if you're thinking about it, do not send me a deck that you're going to be the 5th Facebook. I don't care. I don't think it does anything other than maybe make someone a double return on their investment. I don't want to be part of it. Doesn't mean anything. So for me personally, I need to know it's something that is truly out there that has that ability to change our world as we know it fundamentally. Is that an emotional response? Yes, sometimes it is. And sometimes it's an intellectual response because it's something that is, when it's described, and it happened to me actually this week, I didn't really understand it's in the cybersecurity space. I knew enough, and it was something just different enough that I had never heard anything like it, and I wanted to learn more. And then, of course, I see who's doing it, and actually in this case, to Daniel's, what he looks for, it was a multi-time founder, someone here in town, and they had a recommendation. But I was already hooked. If it had been anybody, I would have wanted to know more. But then my life got easier because it met Daniel's requirements.
I'm happy to answer your question too, and keep going if you like. So what resonates with me and what captures my attention a lot of times is usually it comes through referral. I don't take a lot of cold calls, but I get a lot of pitches, right? And I'll turn the pitch back around to the founding team and give them 5 companies in comparison, because there's a lot of competitors. I don't know them all. I don't know the intricacies of what they all do, but I'll say, tell me how you're different. What's your competitive advantage? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you go to market? And I'll start asking questions that helps me discern that this is a really interesting idea and they've differentiated against the companies that I think might be in that space, but I'll put the onus on the founder to explain that back to me. And that's something that sticks out. Some do it some well, some do it not well, some don't do it at all.
Let me get to another. We'll come back to you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for hosting this, and thank you both. Thank you both of you for being here. It was very informational. And my question is about the new model of Anthropic, which was Mythos. And I've heard that it is a pretty big threat to the cybersecurity space, and it has found critical vulnerabilities in one of the open source projects. So I've heard they are opening the model up to only the top Fortune companies. And I just wanted to know if you have access to it, if MasterCard has access to it, and your opinion.
I'll give you my opinion. I won't tell you whether we have access to it or not. So yeah, like understanding what vulnerabilities are out there doesn't help you that much. Understanding the attack path and whether that vulnerability can actually impact your business, your core business, is unique to every business. So understanding vulnerabilities, there's a list of them. You can go out and MITRE has a list. There's lists of vulnerabilities. That doesn't necessarily prevent attackers from still completing that attack, even though there are so many known vulnerabilities. So I'm not sure that this is really all that valuable for corporations because they're all unique in the way they've set up their infrastructure and how they protect themselves. So that's my personal take. I won't say anything about how MasterCard does it. I don't want, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. It's a good question.
Hi, my name is Dalvin. I was just wondering what skills or background experiences you think are important to someone trying to pursue like VC as a career.
You know, I started talking a little bit about myself, which I don't tend to like to do. Is like my background has nothing to do with VC. I'm not a finance guy. I didn't work on Wall Street. I'm a product guy, and I like innovation, and that's how I ended up in VC. I think there's so many different paths to in business, which is really exciting, and you find your way as you think about what you're passionate about. And sort of like gravitate to certain things. If you're working in a big corporation like me, you know, get that experience working on the innovation side, get that experience working in finance, and drive yourself towards that goal that you want. If it's VC, corporate VC, or venture world, I think it's open. There's not a single path. I don't know anyone who said, "Yeah, I want to be a VC, and this is how you get there."
I mean, what he said, I thought that was a great answer. I think there are people who will come out of finance in particular who they envision themselves coming in and sitting on a board of a startup and helping opine the direction of the company, having never built a product, never suffered and been at risk of anything in what they did. And they think that the fact that they were a finance major or worked at Morgan Stanley for a little bit gives them the credibility to then come in and opine about operations and marketing and product fit and all those things. I mean, there are people who are naturally gifted like that, who it wouldn't matter what they studied, they can do that intuitively, but that still doesn't mean that they have the credibility to say it. You know, and so I think it's not so much, I agree with Daniel, it doesn't matter where you come from, but you should have some credibility in part of what makes venture capital happen. You should either be a technical person who wants to spend the rest of his or her life investing in new therapeutics biologically, or a space person or whatever, and that's where you came from. And you add to the conversation, to the collaboration, and you can assess a deal and the founding team through that lens. And maybe over time you learn the finance side through a colleague who comes from that angle, because that's usually how most partnerships are made up these days. It's a bit of all of that. But you know, I think you could be someone who came out of something, the creative arts, and be a really good venture capitalist. I think someone who can look at something from a different angle and assess and has a curiosity that allows them to add to the due diligence, great. So yeah.
Hey, hi, this is Sohan. Thank you for the session. So you spoke about how to kind of evaluate a founder in the sense of have they had multiple exits or do they have good referrals and such, right? But do you care about the rest of the team at all? Or do you think, say, the founder is a good representation of the rest of the team? If you do care, how do you kind of go about evaluating the rest of the team? What do you look for in the team?
Well, I mean, it's not one person that makes the company go, is it? So, no. I mean, I look at the entire team because I have to, because that's how it gets done. And, advisory board, you'll often see like an early stage company, especially in the defense space, which is kind of valuable, or often in biology and life sciences, this is like that too. So you have a small core team, and then you have a really impressive advisory board. That helps, but if that core team of 2 or 3 or 4 people isn't on their own, seems collectively to have what it takes, no amount of advisory board surrounding it makes any difference because the advisory board isn't doing the work. So yes, the answer is I look at everybody, and I'm looking not just for the accretive part of what they each bring and what's good about it, but also maybe where they aren't a good fit. So you might have someone, let's just say it's a cybersecurity company, and I see that the marketing person has only come out of CPG or e-commerce. It might be okay, but I don't know whether or not that marketing person really understands the challenges of a deep tech situation like cybersecurity and all that takes, and I might be concerned about that. So the CEO might be perfectly great otherwise.
Yeah, I'm the same. This isn't a one-time interaction. Over time, I end up meeting the entire executive team and often the level below the executive team, and I judge the organization and the leadership and the company based on all the people that I meet. And this happens over weeks, sometimes months, sometimes over a year. I mean, I've been tracking a company for 2 years before we brought them into the program, made an investment in them, and I met a lot of their team. Yeah.
Hi. I was wondering when a large company like MasterCard, when do they decide to build in-house versus invest? Because I know like you definitely could build it in-house if you really wanted to.
Oh, this is a terrible question. I wish you hadn't asked this question. Oh my God. Oh my God. I could like really get into this a lot. So I have a bias, clearly. We're shitty at building things. We're slow. We're ineffective, totally buggy. You can't invest in everything. Why would we try and build something that a company got $50 million for just on this one little thing, and we think we are better than them? Don't get me started on this build, buy, partner concept, because I think most big corporations think they're the best at everything, and that's just not possible. You can't literally be the best builder of everything. You cannot. So find small partners, innovation, find startups who are really specialists, who've taken on more capital than you as a corporate will ever invest in finishing or figuring out this one idea. But this is a bias, obviously. This is where I sit in the organization, and philosophically, I'm a guy who thinks about in the corporate setting, there are much better ways to spend capital through partnership than building on your own. We're just slow. We're ineffective on some things. On other things, like if you want to talk about network infrastructure, there's nobody better than MasterCard at building network infrastructure. But if you think that we will build an agent to do a back office case management, why would we ever build that? Why? And I have these arguments all the time internally, all the time. Sometimes I win, sometimes I don't win, but I won't stop. Because I think it's a really ineffective use of capital to try and build everything. I'm super passionate about this, as you can tell. It's a great question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sanjana. You guys have been in this space for a really long time, so I wanted to know what's your most favorite or most memorable company that you've worked with, and why?
Ooh. Oh, man. So like we had this conversation. I usually have a cheat sheet. Like we've had 500 plus companies. We have 500 plus portfolio companies. So like I'm racking my brain. through the list of all the acquisitions we made, all the investments we made, and all the companies that have been through our program. A favorite. That's like picking your favorite child. I don't know if I can do this. I can try. Okay. Okay. So I met this company in Israel maybe about 2 years ago. Company's called Shield IoT. They're in the IoT security space, totally unrelated to payments. And I met their founder and I was like, I really like your technology. I'm trying to apply it to my business. How does this fit? And we started talking, and over the course of a year, we're like, why aren't we thinking about IoT in the space, in the context of payments? Like your phone, your computer, your vending machine, your EV charging station, your smart meter. Those are all IoT devices, have security flaws, and take payments. And so like just iterating with this founder over the course of a year and the context of how we could solve this problem from a payments perspective, less so from a technology perspective, less so from an IoT perspective, but that intersection between IoT, security, and payments was really intriguing and I think game-changing for MasterCard. So maybe that one?
I can't wait to hear the other ones you have. I mean, you did pick your favorite child. So I actually already met, so besides, I'll say it's a two-parter. First was the company that I ran, which was solid hydrogen energy, portable, lightweight, non-explosive, could do anything and helped, would be a nice complement to batteries and everything that we were doing, clean in every way. What happened with that company? We had to put it to bed in COVID. I was trying to build a $75 million fuel plant when COVID happened. That's a tough moment, by the way, guys. But I still, to this day, and everyone, all of our investors, my entire board, which is ex-Apple, multi-billion-dollar fund of funds, eBay, this is a great group of people. We lament it to this day because had COVID not happened, and it's not the only reason, but it was the main reason, I think we'd be in a very different place today. We would all be using that maybe differently. And that problem has not gone away. I loved every day of working on that company, as scary and horrible sometimes as it was. All the ups and downs, I would do it all over again. So that's my favorite. And anybody who was part of that journey, I think would say the same thing. When you see it and you're part of it, you know it, and you'll do anything for it. And you'll die trying, basically, which is what happened. But the second part of it is the space company I was mentioning. So I meet these guys, and they're all in their 40s, somewhere in their 50s. And they all been in the space business at things like Johnson's Control Center. They've been at NASA. They've been at JPL. These are people who've been in the space business their whole lives. And they've figured out, and they can tell it to me, and they told it to me in 2 minutes. They could figure, understood that where the rocket business was going, and SpaceX was barely born at that point. They could see that all of the cargo that was being put into any rocket, didn't matter who was making it, was really inefficient. So the launch cost was higher than it needed to be. So whatever you were putting in, a big satellite, small satellite, a package to the space station. And they figured if they made standardized racks and everybody could build their thing to fit in that rack, every launch could be maximized in the cargo space. And then once it got up to station, to ISS, it could be then more easily put in the station if that was appropriate and more effectively used for the astronauts who are up there who have limited space and all that stuff. And they wanted to build an airlock that was the first commercial airlock for ISS, because ISS is, as everyone knows, it's all research. It's to learn. There was no real commercial, but this was the space business was starting, and they could see that that was going to become a need. All the CubeSats, what became Starlink, and all those things. So here are a bunch of guys who are on to most people's eyes, were in the tail end of their career. They could have easily retired. They probably should have in any other, but they saw the opportunity. They'd spent their whole life finding that product, that problem that needed to be solved, that was a really good product fit that only they knew how to solve, and they could do it faster because they knew everybody. And that was Nanoracks, and it was stupid name, by the way, Nanoracks, terrible name. I tried to, whoever asked earlier about investor or putting pressure on people, that was my one moment where I was like, guys, it's a really stupid name. Nanoracks means nothing to anybody. It's not nanotechnology, and rack is kind of boring, so let's do that. And they ignored me, thankfully. and went on and made a very successful company that was acquired. And to this day, right now above us on the ISS, there is the Bishop airlock that has our family's name on it. There's a picture of my family up orbiting right now in the airlock that they let me do when we funded it and put it and built it and survived the launch and got up there. And to this day, it spits out CubeSats all day long, all the time, and for testing and experiments and the whole space economy that's now happening. That was the beginning of that. That was amazing. Can you imagine being part of that and hearing guys coming to you and saying, listen, we've done this our whole life. This is the moment. This is what we can do. And it wasn't that, if you think about it, anything I just said wasn't that, it's not crazy science fiction, right? Other than the fact it was in space, which is hard enough. But the concept of the racks is a very logical thing. Everybody was like, oh, of course, why didn't they do that before? But in typical fashion, the industry had done things a certain way. And all the economics of launch and everything all that had just been plumbed for generations, except for the guys that had been in it the whole time and could see where it could be fixed. And it went on to become a huge, and it was acquired by Voyager, which then went public. And I just think the world of that kind of, I just think that's what we get into this for, is to be, not to have your picture up on the station, that was cool though, but to be part of a group of someone's journey where they've really nailed it. And they had an 18-month, 24-month payload backlog of services. They had pre-sold that far out in the future as a tiny little company because every rocket company and all the major governments, everybody wanted to use those racks, and it made their life so much easier. So that was my other favorite one, and I'm looking for another one like that today.
Do you guys, do you still study Michael Porter, 5 Forces? Anyone had a class that talks about Michael Porter's 5 Forces? It's probably old school, yeah? So like this underscores the external factors, right? I've seen a lot of companies underestimate the economic impact, changing nature, force majeure kind of things in their business model, right? And so if you read or think about Michael Porter's 5 Forces, I suggest you look at it super quick, just to conceptually understand, what some of these old school luminaries think about in terms of bringing up a product or a company to market. Don't underestimate the external factors, which is really like COVID. COVID had a huge impact on a lot of companies. Nobody thought about that, but it's not that unique. Like we've had lots of cyclical economic cycles and have had significant impacts on companies. And just think about what would happen if, and think about those external factors.
Okay, I think we're going to be at our last question because we're almost there.
Hi, didn't introduce myself before, but I'm Jacob. I'm an MBA student at Rady. So I guess I'm going to end on kind of a bummer note, but I was curious, any companies that you've passed on that you regretted later?
Yes, so many. Sometimes the stars don't align. Especially in a big corporate, you have to get permission from your CFO and a ton of other people oftentimes. And yeah, we've passed on companies that I thought were like just perfect fit. We would crush, make lots of money, and someone else bid higher and we weren't willing to go any further. I don't want to say the name because it like still stings me today. But yeah, for sure. There are companies that I wish we would have either acquired, invested in. It happens quite a bit.
It's a terrible question to end on. No, it's great, actually. So actually, it is a great question. Typically, if I have had regret like that, it's because I couldn't keep up with the deal. And it's not me saying I don't want to do it. It's that I'm outpriced, or it's too big for me, and the situation that I'm in. And if I had been in Sequoia, I probably could have done the deal, but that was not my lot in life, so it's okay. So I don't really have a lot. When that happens, it's like, what are you gonna do? You did your best and you try to, and then you just let it go. And you actually, if I like a founding team, I actually kind of keep an eye on them, and I wish them well. And you never know what comes around. Maybe next time they have a big exit and then they come back and do their second thing. And next time I can work with them, and I've watched them grow, and maybe I give them help in other ways. But my biggest regret actually was back to the .com era. When I was in corporate VC, I was actually at Palm Ventures, which is a company that no longer exists, and you guys don't know what it is on the whole, but it was big in its day. And yeah, Palm Pilot, it was before smartphones and all that. And so the older people in this room know what I'm talking about. But it was the early, stylus-based handheld, and it was amazing. But anyway, the .com era started to happen, and started to conclude. It was starting to bust, and my wife and I made what we thought was the very logical and well-reasoned decision to come back here to San Diego because we wanted to start our family. And we'd been up there for a bunch of years, had a great ride, did amazing things, no regrets, but we thought it was time to switch gears and come back down here. We were very excited about it. .com era blew up. We patted ourselves on the back for dodging that bullet, except for my buddy who was my partner at Palm Ventures. Went to a place called First Round Capital, which is arguably the best early stage venture capital firm, I think, in the world, out of San Francisco. And one of his first deals was he put $500,000 in this little company called Uber in the first stage. And he and I are good friends to this day. And when he's flying in on his jet from his 5 houses or collecting artwork and whatever he does, his first thing when we sit down over beers, and he's still a man of the people, he has beers, he says, "God, you were so stupid." He literally says it every time. He goes, "You were so stupid, and we could have done that together the whole time." And that's my regret. But do I regret moving down to San Diego? No, it's been great. But sometimes you just make your choice, right? It's okay. How's that for a happy ending story?
Yeah, they're very good. So let's thank Daniel Rich and Kris Lichter. This has been absolutely amazing. What a great conversation. Before you all leave, I'm going to show this QR code. We do really, really want your feedback on today's event. We run these Meet the VC events regularly through the course of the year, and your opinion does matter because we do try. This is customer discovery in action right here. We want to know what you want so that we can bring in speakers like this to meet your needs. So please, I'll walk slowly around, but let's give them another round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. It was great questions.